horrible these crime people are, including law and crime that cite, how horrible their language is and how they talk about the genders and stuff. And if you're so used to it, you wouldn't even notice it. But for me, it's like a nightmare just sitting through, because it's like every other sentence. It's like, oh, shut up. This, that. Why are they describing it like that? That's not true. Oh, there's lying LAPD again from the 1990s, making up shit that they cared about this and rewriting the story, such as they did. Oh, yeah, the Mormons. The Mormon story came up. They literally retold and whitewashed that story, like, to no end. I was sitting there listening to it going, that shit did not happen. I don't know what they're talking about. The whole time they were sitting there going, religious freedom. They can human traffic these women and rape them, because they want to stay. Like, they didn't even care about grooming. And they were like on this big like war to like let them be that way and totally have this cult, right? Before that guy got like I don't know, that whole thing. I go, oh yeah, that's the cult that we're talking about. Because that was the story that came up. And they were like human trafficking all those girls and stuff, and in that cult, and they were all looking the same, and they wouldn't leave, right? They were like, they were all, oh god. Ugh. But yeah, they were trying to defend it. They were defending it, and I go, you no. And they were trying to get him out. Like, there was family members going, we got to get him out of here, and we can't get him out, and they won't leave, right? There was a thing about it. So I was like, yeah, that was before that Keith Raniere thing. And I told you, and that Keith Raniere thing was a stem off of the LOA cult that I was dealing with. And I was like, it's crazy because I don't remember. I think it was the other girl. There was two people. I believe it was the bad girl at the work that was a suspect in our other stuff that the cops covered up and that shit and all that. That got me to go to the movie that the cult put out, because it was a cult that actually put the movie out, but nobody knew it was the cult that did it. And they were saying, oh, don't you know about the one lady, because this is her setup. And I go, oh no, I don't need to listen to her, you know what I mean? It was like this thing. But the rest of the people in this story, I don't know if they're a part of the cult, but they did the movie and they seem very open to that philosophy. And there was one guy in there that I wouldn't even feel threatened by on anything on this planet Earth. He's kind of like this cartoonish type of hippy dippy dude who's just like quantum physics. It's like, okay. But the couple of people on there were part of the cult. They were like their understudies. And that guy now runs all these things on YouTube. He has a new thing now. And I was like praising. Oh my God. Like when I look back on it, I'm just like, no. I was like every part of it. But yeah, the Keith people and all them, it was a branch off of those people. But you saw it coming because there was like a tank of them. And then the Ray Jones dude that ends up killing a bunch of them in Arizona, because he's telling them, he's like, ignore your emotions. There we go, like a sociopath, and let yourself die in a sweat lodge. And then they did, and it's like, yeah, I know how that happened. Because the way they were talking, they kept saying, ignore reality and make your own and override it, and that's the reality. That'll be your new reality. It's this fucking crazy thing, dude. And these people were nuts. They're like, so if you're without food, it's your fault. So if you starve to death, you just didn't think about it good enough. That's them. I was like, that shit is psychotic. And it was not limited to it just being from a bunch of non-religious people. There was a tank of Christians involved in that. And so the Christians were kind of one-upping their craziness and getting involved in LOA. So then you hear them do that positive shit. Oh, God. And they call it toxic positivity, but technically that's the LOA cult. So the LOA cult has the belief of repetition of, saying something positive, and all of a sudden it'll be positive, and it never is really. But anyway, I was like, you could brainwash. That's how you brainwash yourself, actually. And you can make yourself delusional. Mm-hmm. But I was studying it. I was so fascinated by how you could literally, like, fuck yourself up on your own. I was like, technically. And, And if you're not educated before you jump into that, I could probably see where you would jump off the deep end. Because it was kind of like this thing where I was like, yeah, your brain, the way you think, and you could just like totally convince yourself of this thing. And, one of the books that I pulled up that was at the Bodhi tree, it was basically saying that. They're like, they created their own tulpa, their own god. And then everybody believed that they thought they saw it. And I go, yeah, because if you kept telling the room that there's ghosts here and all of a sudden these weird things start happening, then they just start, they just get into a psychosis, into like a group psychosis. And it was really interesting because I go, oh yeah, that explains like the younger years when we were all Christian and stuff. And like, like, is there really demons out here? Is there, and then everybody just like spooks each other out and, and then you just get into this other thing. But it's not different. Like you go into that LOA thing, they're pulling the same crap. The female socio thing. Okay, back to that. Well, what was wrong with Tim Ballard's wife? Another thing I hate about this human trafficking topic, okay, and kidnapping. Okay, so every time that they pull up a case about kidnapping, again, they focus on the most ultra horrible way of kidnapping, and kidnapping is an everyday thing where people do things against your will and take you somewhere against your will, right? That needs to be talked about more, and they need to persecute people that do those things too, because it's not any different than any other kidnapping. It just, some forms of kidnapping, include violent acts to get you against your will. Other forms of the most common form of kidnapping is just lure by fraud, right? Where it's just like, oh, we're going to go to so-and-so's house. And in fact, half the cases that they pull up on TV where they're like, oh yeah, they said that they were just taking her for a ride somewhere. And then all of a sudden they murder her or something somewhere else. So they kidnapped her. Like they took her and then they kidnapped her. There's an action of kidnapping right there. So they don't put that forward. So women just let themselves they get kidnapped and they don't say anything. It's just that when I got kidnapped in the multiple times here, it's that I didn't die, right? So the majority of times when people are kidnapped, they don't actually get killed. That's actually the truth. So whatever fake statistic that they've thrown out here is just garbage. Women have been kidnapped since the beginning of time against their will everywhere. They're not always killed. I'd say in the majority of the cases, they're not killed. They get taken somewhere. They may get raped. They may have a situation where they're set up in something. But then, or their parents, did something and took them somewhere against their will. But then they let them out eventually. But they're not dead. They could be kidnapped inside of a house for years and then they're still alive though. That would be the majority of it. Kidnapping is equated to a rapist, is doing something against somebody's consent. So that's another education thing. It's weird because they did teach that form of kidnapping, but about little children. And then they just said, oh, it's okay, we kidnap adult women or something. I don't know. It was really weird. It was a really mixed message. It was like, don't go with strangers if they say they know your parents and get in their car. Okay, yeah, that's a form of kidnapping. So, and that is kidnapping by lure, right? Luring somebody to go somewhere where they think, like they're agreeing to go somewhere because they're saying, we're going to take you to your mom. Or your mom said to come with me into the vehicle. So that's it. There's no gun use. There's no by force. There's none of that. So this is a typical form of kidnapping. I wanted to keep stressing it because it's actually a sign of also a rapist. And so any guy or woman that does those things, you should be aware of. Now, I gave another form of kidnapping from when me and our friends, well, it wasn't my idea. It honestly was not. I just happened to be the driver. But we all partook in this action. And our Mormon friend, I was like, our Mormon friend here, was getting abused by a guy. And so my friends thought, oh, this would be a great idea to try to kidnap her so she doesn't go to the guy so she doesn't get injured, right? So the kidnapping is done by, I was like, what is it? Like these, like it would be like these anti-human traffickers that are really not against human trafficking. Like those people, like we're gonna arrest all these women to try to save everybody. Type of action here. This action was really bad, actually. But so they're like, okay, we're gonna get her in the back of your car, and then I guess they all smoke pot. I don't know, all of them. I didn't. They were doing that. And I was like, I guess. I didn't want, these people just did this shit in my car, dude. I go, one of these days, back then it was so illegal, like a cop just stop us. I'm like, it's not me, it's all them, dude. Anyway, so so all of them got her in the back. And then they did that, and then they're like, take off. And okay, so I took off. So I'm part of the guilty party in this, right? So we're taking off, but it's for the purpose of trying to be moral here, right? It's not for the purpose to harm the victim, right? But we're technically doing something that we should not do. Anyway, so we get to a stoplight, and she flies out of the car, runs out of the car. See, we didn't do anything. I mean, we didn't stop anything. And she still went back to that damn guy. So we should have learned a lesson right there. Don't even try. If they're going to keep going back, they're going to keep going back. And don't do something against her will. But that was another, it didn't matter what the MO was, but we still did the action. But the action there was basically based on a moral thing that we thought we were doing. Because I would have never okayed doing something harmful to her. We okayed doing something to try to keep, well, they told me to. Because I didn't even know the whole situation of that guy doing shit. And I was like, oh, okay. So to keep her away from going over there and getting harmed. Okay. I was like, okay. I was like, that sounds reasonable. We're teens here. Okay, we're kids. So I was like, okay, yeah. But yeah, that was a little different. The MO in that one was different. But it doesn't change the fact that what we did, the actual action of kidnapping, that, yeah. So I was bringing it up because I was like, yeah, as a kid when it happened, but that was the mindset about it then. It wasn't us going, let's kidnap this woman into a frat house and try to rape her. That's different. The MO to that type of kidnapping. But still, kidnapping generally is bad. Just generally. But those are ways of kidnapping. Okay. We weren't trying to put ourselves so above everything because the conduct back then was so atrocious that I was saying, even if it sounds bad on our end, trust it was like us being saints in comparison to the rest of the people, right? Because when you look at that, it's kind of like, we're not trying to be bad. Like, we weren't trying to be bad. But the action was bad. Like, the action was bad. They just didn't have these conversations. It's so horrible. But they were kind of laughing. I think that in their minds, they didn't really equate. And I would say even in my mind, I didn't equate it to like the kidnapping that we learned about. Because we don't have the MO to tie up somebody and go kill them, right? And that's kind of the things that they were teaching versus men just randomly going, get in my car, and then we're going to go to the store. And then all of a sudden they go drive out into the middle of the country, right? That's kidnapping. But they didn't say it then. And so it was very confusing. And so, like, I literally get kidnapped, and my friends are laughing like a bunch of sociopaths about it. Like, oh, you guys took off somewhere. And I totally could have been murdered, you know, and jumped somewhere that whole time. And he could have been on the run. It was like an hour, and then they're laughing. They didn't take anything seriously. They didn't go, oh, maybe we should call the cops. I'm talking about there was a disconnect, and they were not responding. And so in the other case that they were talking about, where the two guys were talking about killing their friend, the guy doesn't respond. That's what I'm saying. And that's not normal, but that's what happened because they were keeping the kids uneducated. And then because of that, then they just do a bunch of crimes too. Nobody tells, right? Nobody tells. You're not the criminal doing it, but nobody tells. But then you might do something criminal, kind of like what we did there without really knowing. Because to me, it's criminal. But it's not done to be malicious. It wasn't. Those things. It wasn't like, oh, we accidentally raped her. It's not that story. It's in that context. Like, the context matters of what we're talking about. But yeah, like she should have told on us. Technically, I would have been all, yeah. No, I don't lie. When I do bad things, it's that no, I would typically be the one that's like, yeah, totally. But I didn't think that. I don't know. We just didn't think that through. Um, I was going by my friends because they usually do, and I drove. So yeah, I didn't have to drive. Thought I was saving somebody. It was that moral crusade. And so I know the mindset of these people, and it's just, oh God, it's uncomfortable. Because, like, when you look back at it, it's just like, the hell? I mean, I can see why I wanted to protect somebody. Totally. I'm that person, but I, like, today, if it happened, I would just sit there and talk to him, go, it's probably, this guy's going to end up murdering you one day if you know what I mean? Versus, like, get in my car, we're going to take off with you, this thing. It would have been a different way of going about it. But her religion, when you're talking about Ballard and all that, I go, yeah, her religion, the well, even ours, I didn't find the Mormons to be that much different from us. We didn't have any conflict in person. Just that they had a little bit more strict moral dress codes, just a little bit over there, but not there. I mean, as far as just talking and you believe in the like, there wasn't really that much of a personal difference at the time, so there was no conflict. It wasn't like, and I tend to end up being friends with a whole bunch of Mormons. I was like, what the hell's that? And then they're always like drunk and like evil. I'm like, what is that about? And so then you start to find out about the history of them. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing as Christian, like the abuses and stuff, and the overly strict behaviors and treating women like crap, and then I mean, eventually them wanting to kill off their like men, like some of them. Yeah, I was like, what is that? Um, yeah, it's a combo of those things. Like, what the hell? And then the guys are off all cheating and stuff on all the women and going after kids. Uh-huh. But they're so stupid about it. I started meeting survivors and they changed my life, and I felt like I had to get involved more because their situation was just so horrific. Even though she's a white woman in America and she didn't look at herself as being human trafficked ever, like in America, just generally from the laws or any of that stuff, and none of it. Being a little kid and then you were forced to be with some guy, or some guy forced himself on you, and then they gave you no agency. Yeah, that's actually part of human trafficking. And having slaves, when the Mormons had the Indian kids, that was human trafficking. And then they allowed them to sexually abuse the little kids. And so yeah, that's the Mormons being human traffickers as well. It's not like one group of people were doing the human trafficking, it was like all of them. And then they were abusing, well, they abused women doing it, and then the women do it, and then it's like that cycle. That's what I was saying. I go, it's a cycle, because you can't break it down and go, oh, it's all just white women that did this thing, because in truth that's not actually how it went. It went from white men dictating how women should be in general and abusing them, and then it just made it normalized. And then they would, because men were abusive, then they would abuse little boys because they were telling them how to raise those kids. And then the men start blaming the women for them getting abused. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's this thing, it's a little zigzag of things, right? And they don't get it. And they pulled up, it was okay, yeah, so on Oxygen they were pulling up, they're like, how could it be male supremacy if a whole bunch of women were agreeing with it? I go, because they're all male supremacists. I go, we all were, like, we all got raised into it. So if you're not aware of it and you're not getting rid of it, then that, otherwise we wouldn't have any problems right now if that wasn't the case. The women would be like totally not down with this crap, but they are, because they're so brainwashed. But they were brainwashed for eons. Like, you're talking from BC, you're talking from way, 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 way back when, because these are not their thoughts and ideas, which is creepy as hell to sit there and come to a realization of that. Like, everything about the world is like from some guy's thought, their dreams, their thoughts, their freaking, bullshit. and particularly white men, it's like, oh, we have a dream to create Tesla. It's like, you know, like we're literally like living in a white man's dream. And so when you're looking at that, it's disturbing. It is disturbing because it's like, where's you know, everybody else's thoughts and ideas, you know, their dreams? What do they want to see in the world? They didn't all want to go jump to the planet, the where the moon, I don't know, and live on the moon. Whatever bullshit that they're coming up with. Stem cell Jesus, holy crap. That guy, I had to laugh. Somebody brought up the stem cell thing. I was like, they don't even know the human trafficking aspect of the stem cell thing. Holy shit. Okay, so when you're talking about that thing, yeah, but it's, again, it's white men that they're like, we want to live forever and we're going to go steal some stem cells from like some women, you know, on their period. It's like, what the hell? So, yeah, and then the guys are, you know, gets convicted, and then his pals are still running around out here going after young kids. And then I get all of them coming after me. I was like, this is ridiculous. But they did it to men, allegedly. And again, it's still not brought up in the story. I'm like, no, that's not okay. You can't okay it for anyone. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like, if they're okaying it on us, they're okaying it on little boys. So it's not anything different. It's such a back and forth because they're going, you could rape these girls. And then, so then they go rape the guys. And then the guys are like, okay, it's fine to rape. And then they, you know, it's okay to be a sociopath. So we're not even going to stop that, PD. And then we're just going to keep abusing and abusing and abusing and abusing. It's that. It's totally that. And I go, you need to freaking pull the fucking reins on that shit, like, right now. Because it's so out of control that it's like the, you know, the snowball effect, right? Like, it was going on, it's going on, it's going on, and it's just getting worse and worse. I mean, I don't know if I should say worse. It's just traveling. I'm like, it's just traveling through time, where you're seeing it through the historical thing, and then you're seeing it now, and it's just like, it evolves. Like, back then, it used to just be, they used to shoot up the place like the Wild West, and then it just like evolved into this other thing where it was like mass serial killers, and then it evolves into this other thing of like mass school. Oh my god, school shootings. Then what it means is, though, but it's telling you what's coming in the future, that it's going to evolve into something as bad or worse. And then it'll shift. So even if they went, that's why I was trying to explain the gun theory, because the gun thing is, I mean, like I said, I'm so anti-gun. Like, if you just ask me generally, I'm like, nobody should have a gun. But I'm not even going on like that. I'm saying, like, the gun thing itself has nothing to do with it. Rather, the mindset about that shit, and when you go into this thing, and even if you remove all that, right, it just causes this other thing where then now the same horrible humans are going to evolve and harm them in another way. And that's the key area that you need to go, you know, where to tackle. You know, to tackle in the early portions, and the early portions are completely hidden from the public. Like, they don't do anything to the kids when they're very young. They don't want to diagnose them when they're very young, which I don't even know if you really need to diagnose them as they're young, but they could look at them and go, they're on their way to be a sociopath. And then you need to tackle it and then arrest the parents that should have been arrested. Some of the parents may not need to be arrested, and they just need to be in a program themselves to be better humans. But there is a lot of cases where they do need to be arrested. Like, they legitimate need to be they need to be arrested. And they're trying to say that they don't want to arrest them because they don't want to take kids away from the parents. I was like, okay, that's good. So then when you don't do that, then they're going to come out and kill us all when they're older. Yeah, okay, perfect. So it's kind of that thing. And so it's like they have to do something, and then they don't want to out the violent perpetrator kids, even though they're a danger to even adults. Like, the violent perpetrator kids will kill adults. They will also rape adults. They will do a lot of crimes on adults. And when you have that situation, it's a kind of a non-curable thing typically at that point. And they need to tackle that. And you need to research a lot more on that. But originally, what they did was cover it up. I said they covered it up through the court, and they didn't even put him in a program. They're just like, oh, some boy did some sociopath behavior and totally broke some bones, but that's a typical kid. That's a typical boy. It's a typical white boy. And I'm like, this is insane. So they didn't do anything. They just cuddled it and the mom paid money out, right? And then they didn't tell the public. And then later, this murder case happens. And it was like, oh, you can't even bring it up. That's good. Because we have to protect them because they were kids. I'm like, that's when it matters. Because if you brought up the early portions of those cases, like they even pointed out with the guy that chopped up the family and whatever, you pull up the early portion of the cases and it explains them to a T, like why that happened. But you need to know why, because it's harming us all, and you need to tackle that. Not sit there going, we're going to make 10 million laws that, we're against porn, we're against gun. I mean, I'm against guns, but I'm just saying, it's just like, it really, the heavy focus on that thing. I was like, well, then you should be against having knives too, because holy crap, the tank of cases I'm pulling up with kniving, are the same guys. They're the same guys. They just choose a different weapon. It's just like, okay. Then when you start talking about street level crimes, then you need to tackle not being an abuser and throwing people in the street and being racist and classist and doing these things. And those are hate crimes. It's hate crimes to have them down like that. There's a whole thing to it. That's why I said, I go, they're their own. they self harm, right? The white men self harm, and they don't see it clearly as to their actions causing that entire problem right there. Everything, the entire hell of the world. Mm-mm. Because it's multiple things, and the health issue, the mental health issue. Oh my god, it's caused by them. I was like, wow, okay. I do not believe in that. In their bullshit now, because I was like, they are using that as a manipulation and they're not actually diagnosing them properly. And they've been cuddling them. Oh my god. I was like, okay, so when you write down the definition of these things, it literally says on the bottom, religious, homes, whatever, military home, like these things, right? And it's almost like when they actually see them in person, because the therapist is probably Christian or it's a guy or whatever, and they're like, oh no, we don't see any problem with any of those things. So we're not going to diagnose them properly, and we're just going to brush that off. It's okay that some guy is the head leader of the home. Like this bullshit, like they're just brushing off the sociopath behaviors. And they're like, oh, it's just depression. Oh, they're just violent and, this way, because they start making these, I don't know, they're excuses for something. I'm like, PTSD did not cause that. It's a false equivalence. It's the same thing with the alcoholism thing. Those are false equivalences to those things. And I said, I was going to get into the field, but what happened was when I was going to school and I was getting the thing for it, at least for one portion, I was like looking at it. I was like, why? I was debating. I was like, would I want to spend thousands of dollars to go to school for this crap? But second, I didn't want to sit and listen to all their problems every day and help them in person, right? Because I have problems with them, and I would not. No, I go, don't be bullshit at me up in here. Like, it just wouldn't happen, and they're supposed to be a little bit more caring like that. So, I would have a problem with it. I go, I know you're telling me some bullshit up in here, dude. So I'm not gonna have it. So I was like, I'd rather in what I'm looking at is look at what the problem is, and try to get them to focus on that problem, and then steer it where it should go, versus like an individual thing where they're coming to me and I have to deal with their damn fucking problems every day because I got my own, and I got to deal with myself. And that shit would take me to the ground, because I know it's not curable at this time. And all you're doing is just kind of like entertaining their bullshit. Because in a way, to those guys, it is basically just making them feel like they're just being enabled in some way, basically. And you may get a percentage of them that are really like, it's really hard for me to be a good person. It's really hard for me. Can you really help me not be, like such a piece of shit? This thing going on. But then they don't, right? They literally don't see a problem with other people who are outright rapists, and they're like, we're just gonna hang out with them. Like they literally, that's where they are. So there's no cure for that. And even when you point it out, because they know it's not a thing that they don't know. Like they know, and it's I don't really give a shit. Yeah, just that thing right there. Um, and to really tackle it, you have to know like causation, when it's happening, what are the ways that you can at least prevent it. We know there's a possible prevention, but the cure later, no, because it's just they're not developed. You can't inject it. It's not like you can give them a pill, unlike a lot of other things where you can give a pill to make them feel better. You can't give them a pill to give a shit, and it's that thing right there. And so it's like, I mean, I don't know if in the future, I mean, I have hope for everything in the future, but I couldn't even imagine right at this moment like them injecting empathy in anybody. I mean, that would be hilarious. It would be good. But I don't know. I don't know if it's a process where they have, I mean, if there's a process that they can go through to like through the development years of like the normal process of that um developing, if they could put him in a process at a later date to try to do. I don't know, dude. You guys, there's so much I need to be learned about that. But since they have covered up most of the areas where you would need to know about it, they haven't got any. They haven't got anywhere with that. None. Even though they claim they may claim a lot of things. No, because there's so many. If they did, then there wouldn't be so many. Um, but that's the unfortunate thing. And yes, that includes females. Yes, that's definitely yes. We should look at them more often. Even the physical traits, because I was like, no, they actually do. They always remind me of like someone that's gonna harm me. Like I know it. Like I look at them, I go, that person right there is gonna do some damage. And yeah, and I would say a lot of them, they're like Christian conservative older ladies. Like that's been those are my target, like the ones that target me, those ones. Like a lot of times it's those ones where they're like really Jesus thumping, very straight laced, yeah, they're the ones that always want to start something with me and go, oh, she's this way, we need to get rid of her, and they start doing evil plots on me. Christian, she's automatically dubbed back. It's like I was Christian, and they still did that. That's what I was saying. I go, that's just an excuse. They're just socios, because I was like like I went to every church you could think of. I was like, and we were dealing with all those people, and I go, they were still that way. Like it didn't change. Like nothing changed. Like I left and they still treated me the same. So while I was in it, they still treated me that way, and when I was out, they still treated me that way. So they're just abusers. I was like, there's no excuse for that. I never treated anybody like that. I just read the above article from Ireland in which the judge is wondering why so many men from nice home with otherwise good backgrounds are running around committing rape. What's wrong with this judge? Yeah, no, the judge also, it said he got appointed in, I think it was in 2020. So he's like a new judge. I don't know, but I don't want to say all men because isn't all that I know of. That's how they put that I know of. You see? That's the thing, because I used to run with that. But you have to think about this really deeply. Why is it that all these guys, when it happens to you, that they start targeting the shit out of you, and all of them? You don't even need to know them. And their language when they're speaking amongst themselves is very derogatory, and they consider that to be okay and somehow funny and somehow normal, to treat other humans as objects. It doesn't need to be just females. Like the way they're talking about other humans is like, we're just gonna go do these horrible things to them, and why not? It's hilarious, you know. No, even the bands that I used to like, and not just, I mean, there's a lot of bands that I used to like. that I refuse to give them a dime today. I'd say the worst one was my favorite band, and somebody became a murderer. Yeah, the recent one. I just saw them in May. And I was like, I had a negative. I tell you, I pick up on things. I picked up. It's so weird. Like that story is so deep that it's a very layered story. Um, I love that band so bad that I was just like, I never even got to see them. And then like one day, I was like, I'm gonna go see them. Like they're just crazy. Now I knew they were crazy, but I wasn't really I wasn't like analyzing them at the time. I was just like I was so busy with the other music camp and myself and our music that I didn't really get to go out much to go see all these other bands. When I did go out to these bands, it was me kind of scouting the scene, and so I would go out like it's like a job. I would go out alone, and I would go out into Corona. I would go out into all these clubs, right, and see what was going on in the scene, all over the place. And but they were like underground places. It wasn't like, oh, these big bands or anything. So for some reason I just didn't do that. And I never knew when they came to play. It was hard to find that out. Back then. Yeah. So then and usually I got invited. So I got invited from the other bands, and then they give me passes and I go do my thing. They didn't invite me. So I'm like, those guys didn't invite me anywhere. So anyways, I go. Nobody wanted to go. Okay, so 2010. Okay, yeah. So there was a whole thing in 2010. So then, yeah, nobody that I knew at that time would want to go to that. So I just went. Why am I gonna? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like some people, I don't know. Somebody brought something up, and I was getting questioned if I murdered somebody. Actually, this was the creepiest thing. I actually want to add this on here because I added it somewhere else, and it was so frightening actually because some guy who was allegedly military. There was a whole thing to this, and you guys know I went in through that cancer thing, and I was like, it was really stressful, and I'll be damned that this fucking band did their bullshit in the middle of this. But I go, and it was so negative actually, and I was like, I was trying to have fun with it, but I was really bothered by the middle finger incident. And I wasn't sure what happened yet, right? I hadn't gone home yet to go look through the video footage. I was like, I literally continually feel like I'm that kid in school and they're bullying me consistently. Um, I know, and it may sound like I'm being irrational of something else. The thing is that there was something much earlier that it started off from that. It started off from that. I go, there's literally no band that I feel that way about. Not even when I was dealing with the perpetrators. I always felt very welcome, but they would get mad if I didn't, do things with that guy, because he constantly wanted to be around me. But I always felt welcome. Like there was always a thing like, we love seeing you here. Hi, like you're wonderful up until you tell me no. It's this. But I wasn't treated like a cancer. I wasn't treated. They weren't bullying me. Like they didn't do that stuff. They did creepy ass shit though. Um, but I wasn't getting bullied. I didn't have that feeling. It was so hard to explain because I was like, I even dealt with Ronnie's cat. I didn't feel bullied. Nobody came up to me and bullied me. Everybody was really friendly, and everybody introduced themselves. And other than Wendy, but beyond that, yeah, no, I didn't feel bullied by anybody else. And so women tend to have a problem. So they need to get themselves fixed in doing that. And then I was talking about those things because Ronnie had just died. Did he die already on this point? I think he had just died. But anyway, I was getting bullied right here. So I went to the memorial and they were treating me like shit there. And I went home and then the fucking blabbermouth wanted to use my fucking footage without my permission. But yeah, somewhere around here. So then they go on tour, right? So the other band. And I go, I have never seen him. I go, I had a problem with this band though originally because I didn't like something. I was being honest. I was like, I had a problem with this thing. And then people were calling him Satan. They were calling them Satan. That they worship this shit. I don't know. Anyway, so I go, I'm gonna go see them. And there was an incident there where I was kind of like, I don't know if this is a normal behavior from them because I never seen them before, or am I reading more into something than I should? You know what I mean? I was kind of like this thing, and I had just talked about a whole situation. Now I know in regards to the story that I was talking about, they were friends, or at least know somebody in connection to that story. And so I was like, I don't know. I don't know if they're making fun of it. I don't know if they're making fun of me. I don't know. I don't know. Like, it was weird. So I was like, when I went, I was like, oh my God, I kind of want to go home. I don't know. It feels not right. It felt negative. I didn't take it as a positive. I didn't take it as anything. It was weird. But I wanted to check with other people, like, was it a normal thing that they did? And other people said, no, they've never done that before. And I was like, oh, okay. So I don't know how to take that. And so then, yeah, it was that stupid. And so then, I don't know, it was a negative thing that I pushed off, and then it was just like, whatever. And then the following, it was like 2 years later. So then I went to go see their other band. And then, in this period, somebody got violent. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'd never seen it. Like, I mean, I don't know. Some of the comments were hilarious to me, but it's kind of like behind the look back, right? It's like, oh, that's a bully. I was like, oh, that's a bully. Like, at the time, it was funny because some of these people, some of the people were talking about are also bad too, right? They're like equally as bad. So it's kind of like you're dogging on people that I would because of other reasons and it doesn't bother me type of thing. But I'm not looking at it like, oh, these guys are the same bullies that those guys are. I don't know. It just wasn't that. For some reason, it just wasn't that. I was like, why would these people bully me on any fucking level? And why would they be thinking of me anyway to begin with? You know, like you're going on this thing about it. But yeah, and then I went to the second thing, and I wasn't aware of comments made at that time, and then they were being weird. Like there was a series of like weirdness events, and it was just like blunk, 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 like this thing. And I was noticing it, and then I noticed it with another group of people that I was fans of, and I had to stop being fans of them too because I was like, I'm not condoning that behavior. They're just putting on a mask right now and just pretending like they're totally for women or so. I don't know what the fuck. I was like, they've been negative the whole time, and I just didn't really zoom in on it. And yeah, and then they just continue, like they have all these people talk about how great they are, and I go, yeah, but the whole time they've been saying these things, and I don't find it to be. They made it horrible for women and their own daughters, dude. So anyway, beyond that, I was like, I'm not supporting that till people fix themselves, and they're probably never going to be fixed. That's just kind of the truth of it. Regardless of how great of an artist they are or any of those things. It's their shitty other behavior that they continually covered up. And there were stories actually throughout the history on that person too. So I was like, yeah, I think it would be bad of me to just totally ignore that. It's just me doing reflection on things like that and empowering them. It just became this deeper thing of like how we empower them and then doing this. And so their way of, striking back is degrading us and then making fun of us, like no longer supporting them. And I was like, I don't have to support anybody. I don't know where that came from. The entitlement from these men, right? You have to support us, cancel culture, this thing. And what was so crazy about it is right at the time I went in May, was it May? I think it was in May when I went to go see these other guys, and they were mocking the whole thing about it. And then just did some conduct, not at the show that I was at, but they did conduct thereafter on the tour. And I was being sent stuff as well from some other psychotic. And then I ran into another thing on them, and I was like, yes, this is a major problem. Like, it got thrown in my face, like, where it's like, you have to, like, you can't be okay with it and then have a problem with it with everybody else, you know? It was that thing. I mean, it was really like boom, boom, boom. And I was like, dude, what the hell? And it was so, there was this negative feeling. I cannot tell you, but it was just like, you need to separate from this. You need to get away from these people. Like, I don't know if it was just a thing that they were enjoying, like being bullies to me the whole time and think it's funny, or if it's just their general terribleness that it's just, I'm just reading off of the typical bullying behavior. You know what I mean? There's this whole thing about it. And the next thing you know, this other guy, I had this other weirdo guy talking to that met them and everything and got drunk with them and everything. And I knew about the drinking that there's a whole thing to it. And then this military guy, alleged military guy, starts asking me on another platform if I ever killed anyone. And I'm like, holy shit. They're going to try to get me booted off of my work thing. It was on a work thing. And I was like, I cannot even number one, we're not entertaining that type of conversation. And two, we never killed anybody. And I don't know why they're asking it. Right. So it's kind of those things. I was like, oh, I could totally see government sitting there trying to set me up on some crime I never committed. They're like, well, let's see if she'll like admit it somewhere over here. I'm just like, I have no fuck clue what the hell this is. And they're like, did you accidentally? My wife accidentally killed somebody. She's dead now. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, this shit is fucking psychotic. I go, okay, yeah, we can't. No, yeah, no, no, we can't talk about, no, never. I never did. I don't know. I was doing this thing because what the fuck? And this went on for a while, right? And then they said they were dying. I mean, maybe they were. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I was like, I was creeped out by it because I just went through that cancer scare. And then I was going through this thing where these guys are being bullies, right? And it made me suspicious. It made me suspicious, okay? I was thinking, is these people fucking with me? Because it could be. And this is my brain thinking this, right? So I'm like, I don't know who this person is. Even though it says this other thing, I go, I don't know what the MO is for this. Maybe this guy's just totally whack. I do get whack people sometimes. And then all of a sudden, in the media, oh, one of their band members murders his girlfriend. I go, dude, what the fuck is that? It went into this thing. And then that guy disappeared, right? It was before the situation happened. And so it was a couple months, actually. It actually went on throughout this time period. And I was like, I'm so bothered by it, but I can't really say much about it. And then that happened. And I was like, you know what? I read it properly. I read these guys properly, just generally. I don't know if they're connected to that thing. I don't know what the hell they're connected to, but I read the situation properly. And I think I was just having an inner conflict with it, like you don't want to see them in that bad light, but they were. And I don't know. I don't like the feeling of it. It's really bad to me. It was so, like I said, it was totally unexplainable. I've never run across that before. And then they try to separate themselves from the conduct, and they're not separated from the conduct because they were actually most known when the guy that murdered somebody was in the group, right? And that's how all the stuff that they did together, that they were on tour playing, is from a lot of that time period. And they all went to school together, so it's not a thing where they just met some guy and they joined a band. It's like they all grew up together. And so we know that all that stuff is created as in childhood. And so they were all acting this way. And I go, oh yeah, hindsight, go back. They were all violent. I mean, I don't know about every person in the band, but a couple of them were violent. At least one. And the rest of them are okay with this. Like, they're all together and they're saying these things. And so later I started noticing, it was like this, like I said, it was a very long process of dropping information and information being tossed to me, and I'm not even looking for it. It's just like one day this, one day that, this thing. And I noticed some of their pals there were perpetrators as well. And I was like, yeah, that's not a thing where you don't know. And then some of the comments started coming out, right? One day I caught one of the comments. I go, oh shit, no. And one of the worst type of comments when you're talking about children stuff, that's a non-excusable thing. So I was kind of waiting to see if anybody's gonna give some like crazy explanation to this bullshit. Like, I'm stupid. I should have never said anything like that. Anything like that. No, no. Instead, they want to double down and make jokes about being a sociopath and then blame some bullshit on COVID, which did not happen. It just didn't happen. But I was still trying to be supportive, right? Because I was kind of like, I had those problems because I got injured. I got hurt by a bunch of guys, right? Like, they physically harmed me. So it caused this other thing. And then I was just trying to be nice about it. And I go, these people are just bullies. They're just bullies. Like, they make fun of it. And then, they were making fun of all of it. Like, they didn't take any of it seriously. And then all of a sudden, one of their buddies goes and kills somebody. And then they try to separate themselves. They're like, oh, we haven't talked to that guy since 97. It's like, no, 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 no. Because when I go back to your early stuff, you guys were beating up on people and being just like Axl Rose, right? Because Axl Rose was doing the same thing at the time. He was being a piece of shit, and that's why they were fighting, because they were on tour together. I go, I have a problem with their band because of the two other guys that were in relation because of some stuff from when I was a kid, right? But they're not fighting over those things. They're fighting because they're just sociopaths that are exactly the same. And somebody came here and had a problem with me equating them to Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson is not much different from a lot of people. Just because he dresses a certain way and, is bullshit. But his actions are actually not very different from a lot of people out here. And lo and behold, I found a video of them doing the same exact shit. And I go, I cannot sit here and defend one and not the other, right? You have to call it all out. And that's really hard for me. It's hard for me because these are actually the people I actually listen to. You know what I mean? When I'm growing up. And then some of them I met. And so it's not an easy thing to do. And I had to do it with Chris Kattan too. That was ridiculous. And his people still come out. I mean, if I even mention his name, holy shit. And these are people I've been fans of. They're people I've been fans of. These are not people that I was like, oh, I hate this band. They suck. And, it's like, doing this crap. I'm actually being very critical of people that I liked. That's just it. And you have to be that example too, because these people have been covering up for people because they like them. I would be the biggest hypocrite to not do that. It was just that in this other band case, I don't know, there's kind of a thing where it was just I was slowly picking up. And then I dropped out. Oh, that's a problem right there. Oh, they look like they have this problem right here. Oh boy. And then you have to kind of, I don't know. It was just a negative thing. I felt like this massive negativity going, boom. I honestly, it's so weird. It's so weird and unexplainable that I was just like, I don't know what it is, you guys. And then all of a sudden, all these bad things, like this guy's trying to text me. And he's like, I want to talk to the cool girl. And he's a fucking psychotic, and we don't even know who it is yet. And then somebody's asking me if I killed somebody, and then all of a sudden that happened. That's why I was like, I don't know who's doing this stuff, and I've never met those people. So I can't answer it. And then LAPD wants to cover it all up. So I'm like, well, you start doing that shit, then just let them all do it. You know what I mean? Just let them all do it. Why is somebody asking me if I murdered somebody? I was like, that's so creepy. Like, are they trying to relate to somebody because they murder people? I mean, or they're trying to set me up in something. That's what I was thinking of. I was like, I could so see those fucking assholes. Government sitting here going, we're gonna try to pin her up to a crime here and say she. I was like, I totally, honest to God, because it almost seemed like that type of thing. Like, we're gonna go on some random website where we know she's on, and just start trying to do this line of questioning to see if we could trick her up and saying I did that. I was like, for one, I never did that. But two, let's say you had a perpetrator that did some crime like that. Who the hell's gonna sit there online and go, oh yeah, I killed a whole bunch of people. About five people in the last week, and I'm randomly gonna tell a stranger. You know what I mean? That thing. But no, I mean, it was so out there that they're just like, did you accidentally like bump your car? Like this thing. And it's like, no! I was like, if I ever did that, I'm just saying, I go, if I ever did that, it creeped me out so bad that I was like, if I ever did that, I would literally call the cops because it's an accident, right? They may throw me in jail and try to pin me for it on purpose, but I'm just like, I would never run away from a scene. I would never do any of those things. And I was like, it was making me think like some more nefarious activities from person asking, and then also that it could get me thrown off a site where I make income off of, because I was like, what the hell's that about? And I've been on there for, oh my god, 20 years. I've never had anybody ask me things like that. Never. Not in person and not online. And I was like, well, there's always a first, but the timing is odd because then the next thing you know, those people go and murdered somebody, the other people. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. It wasn't on YouTube, so it wasn't on Instagram. It wasn't on anything like that. I was on a whole different platform. And I was weirded out because there was another weirdo on the Instagram thing, but they've been around for a while. And I told them they need to get the hell off my stuff. Because not only were they sending me stuff, they were actually condoning the violence and crazy stuff that band was doing. I go, no, see, that's exactly what we're talking about. I go, they did that stuff. And then at the end of the day, someone ends up killing someone, right? It's all fun and games until someone gets murdered. That. And like I said, the more like healthy you get, the more toxic you see how everybody is. And it's that process. It was a backwards process. It was like, because I was fans of them when all this stuff was going on. And then I went to therapy, and then all of a sudden I started talking about stuff. And that's another thing. I was like, I don't know if it was something where people were reading off of and taking it personal, or I don't know. Because when the drinking thing came up, I always talked about my dad's drinking, but I was like, oh yeah, that dude's reminding me of my dad now. And my dad drank all this, and he always had this thing going on. I would just, I'd talk about it constantly, like back then. And I don't know, it's just one of those things I was like, I have no idea. But I don't know if there's a tail off to that thing or what. And then I was saying that there was, because they went out in the crowd and people were grabbing them. Like, I was talking about that actually. I was like, how weird people just grab anybody, right? Against their will. And but I think they were trying to like rip off his necklace, and then he like hit somebody. But again, violence, right? And then that's a self-caused thing because they jumped out in the audience, right? And then he wants to get violent, and it was a continuation of that type of thing too. But I wasn't even going there with that, but yeah, something like that. And then yeah, I can go on a thing about it, but no, it's just like piece by piece by piece by piece. And then yeah, but they weren't really much different from Anthony Kiedis because Anthony Kiedis threw himself on people, right? And then he touched them. Yeah, he did the same thing. But there's some guy, like there's some guy. I don't know about anybody else, but he was talking inappropriately at another show, and I'm sitting here going, okay, we're literally in the middle of this thing, and you think that's funny, dude? These guys are not like 20 anymore either. Nobody should have been acting that way at 20 either, but they're like 50 something years old, and they made. Like I said, they made comments in the 2012 show too. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even hear that. And I wonder when I went, like, I felt so creeped out. Like, I don't know. But also because I went to that Harvey Weinstein set. I didn't realize this stuff. I was like, this place is kind of familiar. I was like, this place is kind of familiar. And at the time, I didn't know that was Harvey Weinstein. And then that's where we taped, like, around the corner. And then they taped the front part of that venue, and Harvey was not even a topic right here at all in 2012. No. And then I go, God, I don't know. There's something familiar about the place, but I don't know. Is this the place that we taped at? Maybe it is the place that we taped at, and I'm confused, and not the place around the corner. You know, like there was two places, right? There was that club, and then there was the one on the corner. And for some reason, I thought it was the one on the corner. But they also taped at the other club, so they could have done both. And I'm just like, well, which one? But yeah, right there, that was Harvey's set. And the human trafficking ring was right next door. And I was like, what the fuck? And so I go down there, and then, I don't know, I was sick. So I just attributed all my shitty feelings to me being sick. And it was a little bit more than that, I think. So, yeah, and that was the last time I saw them up until that last show. And I was telling myself, I was like, it might not be a good idea. I don't know why. I was just like, it may not be a good idea to do this. And I kind of talked myself into doing it because, like, I was trying to think, like, well, maybe it's because I don't want to. I would think something bad's gonna happen, right? And maybe it's just totally unrealistic. No, I'm always right. I'm always right. Like, it's the thing about it. There's nothing unrealistic of what my thoughts are. But for some reason, I want to override that. It's like, what are the chances something bad gonna happen over here? Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a terrible experience there, but it's terrible overall in the entire picture of things. And there's no females in that story. There was no other than that. I don't know about the finger thing. Like I said, that was such a confusing addition in the story. But it was kind of like, oh, I could totally see some people doing that because they were trying to see if I was going to go there alone, and they just want to fuck with me in the crowd. Oh yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me none. And but it's one of those things where it's hard to know because when people do shit like that, they purposely always act like they're not trying to actually do that to you. And so that's why I was like, I don't know who those people are, and I don't trust it. I don't trust it. Like I don't. I feel it's probably more than likely not a direct thing, but again, you can't really go no, no, no. Unless you I don't know, you would have to really look into that situation. But I think it was more of them screwing around, and somebody just happened to be right, and he flipped me off right in my face. But he was doing it to a camera. But see, you guys don't understand that when I was at the show, the only thing I saw was this guy put his middle finger in my face, and I was like, excuse me, yeah, and then not the other portion of it, right? And those are the reasons why I don't want to go out. And those people would think it's funny that people traumatize me when I go out. That's them. They're not the people that would give a shit about their fans getting harmed. Those are the people that would promote me getting harmed in the crowd. That's the truth of it. And that's why I was like, oh, those people are terrible. It's just this thing, you guys. It really is. And you have to go through the history of them to really grasp what the problem was. And it's not necessarily something that's like, bam, right in your face that they're totally like these horrible people right away. And obviously, some people have, a good side to them, when they're talking. But technically, when you really go through the thing, I go, is there really anything nice about them actually in these topic things when they're talking? No. It's very non-emotional in a way where they don't care about anybody else, and they're always like trashing on other people. Like, some of it is funny, but some of it's not. Like, I get the whole thing of the whole bagging on Bon Jovi. Like, I'm here for those jokes, I'm here for the witch jokes, I'm here for that other stuff. But then there's other things where I don't know. Just the actions. Like, I wouldn't have done the actions that they did. As much as I hated the people from GNR that did that shit, I don't believe I would have done those things. But who knows? Maybe I would have thrown a cooked roast at them or something because I was so pissed. Like, who knows? But it would have had a reason because you're talking about rapists. You're talking about child predators, right? It's not a thing, oh, somebody totally screwed up my show. Okay, we have those guys too. Like, the last thing I'm gonna do is go screw up their, like, show. It's like, those guys want to play like that, and they want to be bullies. They want to bully you out of the industry, and then sit there and try to say that they're for women by being shitty to other women. No, you don't get to pick and choose. It's like, you don't get to be shitty to us and then say you don't care that we get raped or your friends did this or that and you're promoting it and you don't care. And then sit there and try to be like, oh, I'm for women. I'm just going to use this woman as a fucking pawn. So, to make it look like we're somehow for equality. They're bullshit. I was calling out the bullshit of that because all these guys have been doing it. And then at what point, and then they go back to their same bullshit again. They're bullshit. They're bullshit. I'm not going to support guys that are like that. No way. And they think they're so cool doing it. So fuck them. I mean, they can go with their crowd of rapists and have that as their crowd of fans. But it's not going to be me. I'm not going to place myself in that position to be abused by some fucking assholes. And that's what they do. But that's what they do. That's historically what they did. They bullied other bands. Like, they started fighting with them and doing these things. And like I said, it was kind of funny. Like, because I hate all those bands. The ones that they did it to. So it didn't rise to the level of like, oh, these are like some really nice guys and they're just being shitty to some really nice guys. It's like, no, they're being shitty to other sociopath men that were shitty to other women. So it's kind of like, go at it, dude. Yeah, I was saying it's a deep topic. It wasn't an easy thing to come to. I was like, it forces me. I have to talk about it because there's other people on this platform that were like, oh, I was such a huge fan of so and so. Actually, two different artists that got in trouble, or at least being called out for things. And they're like, I'm such a huge fan of them. It's too hard for me to talk about, and I'm just not going to. And then they just totally skated away from the topic, even though they're hypocrites, right? Because the whole time they're sitting there going, oh, all these people are bad for doing that. But then the minute it came to somebody that they were fans of, they wouldn't tackle it. Me, I'm trying to tackle it. It's just painful to tackle that because it's also a little hard to talk about because I was like, I have to like break it down as to what happened here. Because it was like, you're talking about from this one point till, we're talking, dude, since 92? 91, 92? Yeah, from that point till now. That's how long I've been a fan. So in between there, like, there was a normalization of something. And then now it's just me going, oh shit, like I overlooked something. All these things. So before I could really give a good explanation to that, not making excuses, but just a breakdown of what happened there, is going to take some time. It was hard. That was hard. I was like, but I have to talk about it. I'd be shitty if I didn't. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm fans of these guys. You got to leave them alone. I was like, no, that's not going to happen. But they were begging for it too, though. They're like, this is the crazy thing. I think they want me to get into a big beef. Because why would they come here and be like, what are you talking about? And then why don't you show it? What are you pointing out? I was like, oh, you want me to go pull up the footage? Because if I pull up the footage, it's going to make them look really bad. Like, if I break it down, each of those things, and put it into one reel, it's going to look extraordinarily terrible. And I have no problem doing it. I'm going to tell you, I have no problem doing it. But, I don't have I don't want to take the time to do it. And honestly, they know what their fucking problems are. And it's really about you guys paying attention to what those issues are and confronting it and not okaying it either. But also for them to get their shit together and fuck off. I mean, it's really that. But I don't want to do that because then it's just bringing more attention here. And I think they want to do it so they can brawl with me. And no other purpose. Like, they don't care. Like, even if I show it, right? That they're going to look at it and be like, you're the problem. Who cares that they did that? Or who cares that they did, this? And then try to make excuses to justify that behavior and then just to bully me. And I believe that's the setup to it and why they keep dragging it on and trying to target me over here. I was like, see, I'm not doing it. I'm not falling for it this time. I think because that's the only way that anybody's going to get any attention from trying to start shit with me and then just to bully me. Because if they cared, like I said, if they cared, they would have done some. They know you're a fan. You literally can reference like what I'm talking about when I go, oh, just like Marilyn. Because it showed, like Google even knew. Google's the one like, hey, did you know that so and so is just like Marilyn? I was like, holy shit. I was like, what was this? Do I remember seeing this? I was like, I don't actually. The whole thing, I remember a portion, maybe it was like that, because I think the last time I seen that was in 2012. I don't, like a decade ago, maybe. But I didn't see everything because there's so much footage that um fans continually upload stuff from all the way back to the 80s. I don't know, but they continually do this, so I hadn't actually gone through everything. And I when I have a chance to, I'll go through a whole bunch of videos sometimes, and then I'm not even through half. I'm not even through probably about like 99% of that stuff. And it was only like, there was a couple things here and there. I was like, oh, that's bad. Oh, that's bad. That's weird. Oh, violent. And then, oh, violent. I was like this thing. But yeah, no. But they were making excuses that these singers should be able to jump out and just grab and throw their face all over you. I was like, dude, that shit right there. I go, that's what we're talking about. And actually, I never seen that in the Alice camp because they never did that. They just get kids in the background. And you know what I mean? That's the thing. But they actually never did that because everything was always like processed cheese. Like it was so like everything is like rehearsed and like the same like every show. Like they do a setup and then it's like they just go through the motions, right? And they have actors, like they do the things. Nobody, not that I recall, ever jumped in the audience and started just molesting somebody. Like it just didn't happen. And he's too old for that anyway. And now what happened in the early days, I don't know. But when you're talking about from the era of 1990 something till the early 2000s there, that actually never occurred. So I didn't actually witness conduct like that in person. The conduct I did witness is them being that way behind the scenes, right? Like when you're talking about other conduct. But they didn't go and try to rape their fans like on stage, or you know what I mean? That didn't go on, and everything is a setup. Like there was no they didn't randomly like spit on a camera guy, and if they did, it would have been a setup in the show for that thing. That's what I was saying. I go, it was so different because all that stuff was staged versus what Marilyn did and this other guy did, right? And I was thinking, maybe I thought it was staged when I saw the other thing originally because of these other people. Because that's how I always learned that to be. Everything you're seeing is fake and it's just set up and it looks like a fan, but it's not. It's set up, it's staged, it's this. Oh yeah, who was the hypocrite? Blair White. Blair White was the hypocrite on the Maryland thing. And some other celebrities were hypocrites on some of these other guys, right? Like they'll say things like, I'll tell you what they say. They got me through my childhood years. They did all these things. They did this and that. And it's like, yeah, I could say the same thing for this band. It's really interesting. And I did cover one of their songs, actually in the early 2000s at a show I was trying to. I go, God, it's hard to, you can't mimic his voice very well, but so you try to make it your own. I don't know, but that was interesting. Anyways, the, there's a lot of excuses, right? And so then they dive off the topic, right? And so then they just become enablers basically to it. And it's like, man, maybe if Marilyn had somebody telling him to his face like the whole fucking time that behavior, like, see, I'm that person though. Like if we were hanging out and it could have happened, it just didn't happen. That I would have said something because I don't like anybody acting like that. Like as far as like the non-consensual situations that were going on, and it's the men mainly like in their circle, right? Because they're all buddy with all the dudes. It's the men in that circle that condone that behavior, and promote that behavior and then cover up that behavior. And then, as you see, actually in the story, it's kind of weird. They kind of abuse each other. And that was another thing to it, too. So it's not like, oh, they're just only abusing girls. It's like, no, they were abusing other guys. And then they'll get into wars with other guys. And then it's funny that the guy that he gets in a war with then has an allegation as well outside the context of that story there. But that was the only one I actually heard an allegation about. And it's the only one that they're not bringing up. I go, how come it's like this? How come it's like any random person can bring up an allegation, right? And they have nothing to back it. I can actually back my allegation to who said it and the people that they're related to. And they're big celebrities. So I'm like, without going into this more deeper outing of stuff, even though at the time I was talking about it because it was related to me firing the guy. And then it turned into this other thing. But, then for some reason they ignored all that, right? And they go after another guy. So there's a second individual in their band. And then you're going to tell me that in between all these people, right? All these guys who are all perpetrators, there's a whole bunch of them. They didn't know any part of that. Okay, come on. It's them hanging out going, we have the same mindset. We have no problem with that thing. Yes, you're guilty by association because it means that you have no problem with that mindset. And you do it too, and you just probably haven't been caught yet for being an enabler in that portion and also doing that type of conduct. Because you wouldn't hang out with it unless you're okay with it, or you're some type of victim in it and you can't really get out of the situation. Maybe it's a little too hard, like there's something about it, but you wouldn't then later then go and enable it and say there was nothing wrong with them, because there technically was, right? And the other people that hung out with them was fucking Michael, dude. And I'm like, fucking Michael. Michael's a hot mess. I go, Michael was a mess back in the day, but I wasn't really dealing personally with Michael. I worked with the brother, right? And the brother was way cool. I can only say so much in the working relationship there. And I was the one that was the fangirl back then because, who thinks that you're going to go work with, those people? But I was just like, oh shit, I got to be all like professional now because I get to work with somebody that, I'm a huge fan of, these people. And that was awkward. Like, that was a little awkward. But that's just honesty there. But I'm just saying, it's like it was interesting because they were not the way that Michael has been. Because they were the ones that said, oh, yeah, I actually love Marilyn. And I'm like, oh, I was thinking that they would say some shit about him, you know what I mean? And they didn't. And then come to find out, Michael was pals with the rapist one too, I guess. Like, all these people, I'm like, you're telling me you didn't notice any of this conduct was like, flagging that something's bad. Well, you find out that Michael's a big time male supremacist. Like, he's just like, men need to be, this bullshit. And he's off having all these problems, right? Like, throughout this period. And he's such a narcissist. It's like, holy fuck, dude. He thinks he's so special that God gave him a Ferrari. I'm like, okay, I was like, that's too much for me. But, yes, so they are that. And Marilyn started trashing. Okay, so here's part of that story that I had a problem with Marilyn about, because so Marilyn starts trashing the brother who I was working with, and I'm like, oh my god, I go, out of anybody in here, the person that even gave a shit about the Alice thing was that guy, and was like, that's not right, being like moral about, like, that's not right, because they've been in the industry a long time, right? They've been on MTV, all this shit, so they fucking know what the hell's going on out here. And I'm like this little 19-year-old, and I'm just like, don't get involved, and, so they were going on, and then, so Marilyn started trashing him and calling him hypocrites and all this shit, and I'm just like, wow, why didn't you trash Michael, though? I mean, the problem person, technically, like, that was acting, a little weird back then, was him. And then he starts coming out after women, going, these women are and they were sending me letters in the mail, right? Like back then, they were just like, this area in the OC is so, it's not godly enough for me. And it was horrible, dude. It was like literally horrible. These Christian people. But he's such a fundamentalist that it's over the top, like annoying, like that type of thing. But that was the thing about, like, I don't hate him. Like, I don't hate Michael. It's just he's so fucking annoying. But like, he didn't do anything bad to me, right? He didn't do anything bad to me. He didn't go destroy my career. He didn't do those type of things. So I don't have like that type of vitriol. I'm not anything like that. It's just we're talking about the mindset here and how they all enabled it. He's hanging out with rapists. He's doing all these things, and then yet seems to be oblivious to the horrible things that happened out here. And yet it was the brother that was questioning the conduct of the other team, and it was me, like, not wanting to get him involved. I mean, how embarrassing. There was a lot of bad things that were going on at the time, and I was like, I am not bringing that up to him. Like, there's no, that's not happening. It's just not happening. And I don't think anybody would have done anything anyway then. But, there was not a single other person that asked about that. Everybody was like, oh, cool. I just worked with them on yada yada. And so I'm more than happy to do this, thing for them and blah, blah, blah. Because they wanted me to get the recordings done and give it. Basically, they're doing the recordings and I'm handing it back to their team. It's not like, any other thing. Like I'm saying, oh yeah, they want, this thing. And then I'm just putting it out there and it has no relation to them at all, right? It's a thing where they were doing the recordings and then I was handing it right back to them, to their team. And, if it went public, great. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like this thing, but it was technically to go to them. And so then, then they all played mute when this happened. I'm like, well, why are they not just saying that that's what was said? They can't validate any other thing about the story other than they could definitely verify, oh yeah, she came to me, said this thing, blah, 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 paid me, and I did that, right? That's it. And they could try to manipulate that story all they want, but that's exactly what happened. And then, so those people knew there was a tank of them because everybody that got hired got told that. So it wasn't anything separate from that. And no, I'm not some crazy person that did that. Because then you see, I have the audio of them bringing me backstage, right? They're like, we're going to go to the will call, honey. You should do this thing, right? So, that was part of that mess right there. So because of that, then all of a sudden all these guys started treating me like shit. And when that story came out, and then people that I wouldn't expect, and they're just terrible humans. They're just terrible humans going on with that. And it says a lot about them, and it gives me a better picture of what happened and how they blackballed everybody. Because I'm sure it wasn't just me. It's like, why would you be mean to me? I've never been mean to these people at all. The only time I'm ever like a bulldog is if somebody's lying to me and I'm going after them, just like I did this morning. But I was like, but I have to. I've been in the industry so long that it's like, I ain't going to be putting up with nobody's shit. Not no attorneys, not no cops, nobody. But again, it's from years of being abused by these guys. You start when you're a kid, right? So the conduct of them has been extraordinarily atrocious, and so they just gang up. I mean, the blackballing is just kind of about them all ganging up and their friends, and then trying to get rid of women that would get them in trouble. And so they kind of, it's pal on pal thing, right? We're all musicians. We all work with each other. We're going to call our other pal in the other band, and we don't like her, and we're going to make stories up. Like they made the stories up when Scott Weiland was beating up on his wife. And they came to me and I said, yeah, the context of that story is really bad. Because when I initially talked about it, it wasn't like I was like analyzing it going, oh, this and that and this and that about it. And I go, I should have never repeated something in the story. And, it became this other thing. But it was more about how they were treating me like shit. And then they started spewing out false information that they're the victims, right? Like this bullshit, and they were trashing women. And I was saying, even if that woman was totally terrible, Alyssa Milano, that whole thing, the context of this was so bad, that I was like, yeah, this isn't something that we should view this a little differently. Like it was that type of thing over, the period of time here. And, even regardless if she's terrible, because she's saying she's terrible too. And I go, yeah, I'm sure she is. But again, the context of this is not right. And I go, I don't believe it had anything to do with the Britney Spears side, even though they had a problem, there was a thing of that. It was these men, and it shouldn't be enabled in that way. Now, I don't like people lying, so I had to pull out that wasn't true of what that other girl said. Not to be stirring anything up, but that was absolutely false. Because I remember exactly that thing on that set there. But beyond that, like the conduct of those people was so juvenile. It totally was, really, at the end of the day. There was some, questionable behaviors back then from a few of them, but, nothing to the point of these men. I was like, if you actually compare the stories, like, some women be acting this way, but then you go look at the male portions, I was like, the male portions are 10 times worse. Like, they really are. But for some reason, I don't know, it just turned into this other thing right here. But yeah, everything's been retaliation. And they know men do this. They're the kings of retaliation. So you can't say anything bad about them. Otherwise, they retaliate against you and they get their gang bros to come after you. I don't know any of these people. That's what I said. I go, so crazy that when it happened, I go, how did this start from a fucking pedophile assistant to it being the entire industry a piece of shit? You know what I mean? Because they all relate to the pedophile assistant. That's really the root of that whole thing. They relate to the pedophile assistant. They have to protect the pedophile assistant, and they have to protect themselves. And that's who they relate with. They're not relating to, oh, we harm children and little girls because that's normal. But yet, this. So they're telling me who they all are. And I go, you're going to see it. And then they're all getting sued now. They would continually, all of them, they're all involved in it. Because where's the guy, again, where's the guys that are so against this that they put their foot down and said, I'm working with her? No, you know what they do is they go, we're going to go work with the pedophile and we're going to say F you to the victim. That's what they do. Because they did that with the other guy from Maryland's band. I go, yeah. I go, as you see, that guy's sober now, right? He claims he's sober. He's still a socio, and he is way more than ever being sober. I go, it's almost better if he was just drunk all the time, because at least he'll be knocked out half the time. We won't have to hear him. But no, he's actually worse sober. And so anytime you say somebody did some sociopath behavior, he will go hire them. He purposely does that. He's that guy that's like, I want to be known as the worst piece of shit ever. And I look up to that. Yeah, that's him. That's him. That's totally him. I go, why would you hire somebody that literally has allegations like that? And it's strange that it is connected to that camp, the group of those people. There was a long story on it. And originally I wasn't trying to protect nobody because they're fucking up my shit, dude. I go, you go fuck up my music. I don't give a shit who's a part of this. But the people in that circle, in the extended circle, was part of the story, actually. And then, I don't know if the other famous guy knew anything or not, but I mentioned it, and then nobody gave a shit. And I was like, oh, dude, what? Now, the victim could get mad if I outed them a million times. It's just that they came up in the story because the people got fired because of the person that they were fucking off my project on when I'm paying and they're not, and they're screwing around on their off time when they're supposed to be doing the work that I paid them for, right? So then it turned into this thing. So then it was like, well, oh, I know about this other thing, so I gotta say it, because I was like, that was what the allegations were, and I 1000% believe them. and then nothing happened. But again, nobody else was mentioned in the story. Don't let them sit there and try to separate themselves from their pals being a bunch of rapists. Don't. Because their conduct together has been shitty all around. All of them. They just sit there and they talk shit. They do shit. They plot shit. They get girls drunk. They knock them out and they go rape them. I mean, that's just what they do. They think just because you come over, some shit like that. There's some other people that are worried, dude. And they should be worried because their conduct was really bad. And back then, you couldn't even say, it's like, oh, you went to the house and you did this, like, you did that. So that means that therefore you consented to somebody to rape you. It's like, no, that never happened. And so then they're all hiding themselves. So the guys that are hiding themselves, this is what I'm saying. The guys that are acting in this way and hiding themselves have a huge closet of being a rapist. It's factual, dude. I go, there's literally not one person that I have not researched that was acting that way that didn't have that history. Not one. And you wouldn't. You would not sit there and totally justify this behavior and try to protect it unless you're protecting yourself. And that was the thing about it. And I go, you need to be aware of all those guys. And they're literally outing themselves every day by their actions. And I'll be damned that someone turned into a murderer up in here. I mean, that goes beyond the rape portion. I was like, there was so, you guys don't understand. There was this major, something screaming out like, run. There's something bad here. Why on earth, as smart as I am, and as much as I know about this, am questioning my fucking brain here? Because I'm sitting here thinking, I'm telling you what I'm thinking and how, when you try to rationalize this, you're like, am I being irrational just that because I have a lot of anxiety because this is going on, right? Like, do I not want to go somewhere? It's strange, right? So I'm like, no, there's actually something legitimate to it, but you have to understand what it is that it's about. And what it was about was them being abusers, and I'm literally walking into an abuser's den. And you have to really sit with that. That one was a deep one. That was a deep one, because that wasn't something that was so obvious when it was happening. I was like, why is this? What is this going on? And you have to, when you're going through therapy, when you go through the thing and you're having, let's say you go to a store and you start having panic attacks, like you have to start breaking down like what's causing the anxiety, and then you go through it, you go through it, you go through it. It was kind of like that thing, but I had no idea what the fuck the problem was. That was the thing. I was like, I love this what's going on? I go, yeah, I feel like I'm getting bullied. Like there's a bully aspect. There's a bully aspect to what was going on here. So I was like, well, I don't know. Something really negative. Is there anything positive that these people ever said for society? Like anything? Like, be kind to. Oh, they made a mockery of that though back in the early portions when the murderer was in the band. They kind of made a mockery that everybody's welcome there and they're not bullies and this bullshit and that bullshit. I was like, oh yeah, that's hilarious. Mostly if you know their history. Anyway, no, I started noticing this. That, like, everything's very non-serious. But there's nothing positive. It's, I don't know. There's a thing. There wasn't anything where it's like, oh, I dream to be free and things are going to be wonderful and, I don't know. It's almost like set up to be like, I'm going to punch you in the fucking face. And like, I don't know. Like I said, that is such a layered topic with those people that, no, you go back, nothing good, nothing good, nothing good. There was nothing good. There was nothing that, um, nothing good. Like nothing good, actually. It was just to me, I looked at it as a form of mindless, brainless, entertainment, like that. Bad things. But that's the same thing with the other camp that I was dealing with. Was there anything positive in that? No, they're killing women. I'm like, what the hell? I can't get away from the guys that like promote killing women to the ones that literally just did it. And the other ones that are raping them, and the other ones that are promoting raping them, and then just using excuses as to why they say that shit. I mean, what is this? you know? But again, my whole thing was in the industry was to counter that. So it would have just been me like doing the op on that. And then it would have just looked bad at this point of them saying, well, you promote the, you know what I mean? But it was just the counter to them because they're such an annoyance. And they wanted that at the time, but apparently if you just don't let them touch you, then that's the end of you.